Здравствуйте. Ренессанс атомной
Hello.
энергетики стал
The
одним
renaissance of nuclear energy has become one of the most discussed topics on the global energy agenda.
подразумевает этот
What
термин.
this term
Если он
implies,
выражает
how the
собой
renaissance is expressed, and the prospects for the development of the industry are the subject of our conversation today with the head of the analytical resource of geoenergetics, Boris Leonidovich Marcinkevich. Hello, Boris Leonidovich. Good afternoon.
Борис Леонидович, сегодня много говорится
Boris Leonidovich, today there is much talk about rethinking the importance of nuclear energy in energy supply and overcoming the negative perceptions associated with it. What factors are associated with this rethinking of attitudes towards the industry? With the energy transition, with the use of safe technologies in fourth-generation reactors, or with some other factors? What is decisive?
Тупик зеленой энергетики.
The dead end of green energy is also the dead end of unholy power. 13. It is obvious that it will not be possible to build unified energy systems based solely on climate-dependent generation. The cost is rising. Now, finally, the opportunity has been given to professionals. If we are talking about the European Union, the NSOE Association, which is the operators of the unified energy systems of Europe, has issued figures on what needs to be done with the power grid if additional solar power plants are not built. To balance the system, an investment of about 1.2 trillion euros is required. If we build additionally, then we will have to recalculate additionally. This became obvious when the energy crisis began. That is, in the summer of 2021. No matter what anyone says, that it started later, it's a lie. If anyone doesn't believe me, open the archive data at the TTF Hub trading floor, and you will find $2,000 per 1,000 cubic meters in December 2021. But then it was already obvious that this was a dead end, that something needed to be done. And if we go strictly by dates, then on December 31st at 23:55 CET, the decision of the European Commission on the Green Taxonomy for Nuclear Energy appeared on the official website of the European Commission. There was also one for gas generation, but that's a separate story. There are a lot of different conditions there. According to the European Commission's legislation, this decision could be abandoned either by a vote in the European Parliament with a qualified majority, or if 21 of the 27 member states of the European Union use the veto right. Neither of these things worked out, but according to the procedure, it continued for a year. And at COP28, at the Great Environmental Forum, this initiative appeared about the need to triple nuclear capacity by 2050. Now, a whole host of financial institutions, including leading US banks, are expected to join this creative initiative and triple capacity by 2050.
Банки присоединятся к этой творческой инициативе и утроить мощность в 2050.
Boris Leonidovich, in this regard, I would like to clarify that the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, recently revised its forecast for the expansion of nuclear capacity by 2050,
К 50 году, предусмотрев
providing for approximately a quarter to half of the current composition of energy facilities. This is how it was said there, depending on the various scenarios, the modulation of which apparently occurred. In this regard, I would like to ask,
в этой связи, что хотелось бы спросить,
is it planned to introduce new capacities in China, India, Japan, Kazakhstan, and a number of other countries?
значит, еще в целом ряде стран. Достаточно хорошо известно, что
It is well known that Rosatom plays one of the key roles in the nuclear power construction market.
может ли
Could such a volume of expected orders lead to demand for our company to receiving new orders for the construction of power units in the near future? Or is it impossible due to political obstacles?
это невозможно.
Если мы заглянем в базу данных МАГАТЭ,
If we look at the IAEA database, PRS, there are 63 nuclear power units listed as under construction. They do not count by power plants, but by nuclear power units, including 2 units of the Khmelnytsky nuclear power plant included in this category, so we are talking about 61. Of these, in the BRICS Plus countries, the Union 52. This is about who to compete with, to say that there will be refusals for political reasons. Political reasons, unfortunately, have interfered with nuclear energy. They intervened, in fact, at that very March forum in Brussels. Not only was Rosatom not invited in accordance with what the European Commission decided, only those nuclear power units that have passed safety checks at the level of Europe and the European Union can be built. In fact,
полностью удовлетворяют
the units from the French EDF, the Olkiluoto nuclear power plant power unit, based on the PR-1600 reactor, and
французская ЭДФ,
Мгм.
атомная электростанция Олкилоута,
the Belarusian nuclear power plant, with 2 reactors based on the PR-1200, fully satisfy these stress tests of the European Union. Europe, in fact, has little choice.
и все, что
And all that remains at the disposal of the highly respected collective West is either French technology, beauty with French charm, 18 years of construction in Finland, not bad, and technology from the supposedly American company Westinghouse Electric, sort of, because it is registered in the United States, while 100% of the shares belong to a Canadian company, but
Корейский участник, который-
there is also a Korean participant. Of course, he will challenge the Korean one.
Компания KEPCO, Korean Energy Power Corporation.
The company KEPCO, Korean Energy Power Corporation, yes, they already have a built nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates. Baraka single capacity per unit 1400 megawatts, yes, generation 3+. It is not certified in Europe and has not passed the relevant European tests. And people say they are not free from addiction. Yes, from Westinghouse, because there were some agreements there, nothing appeared in open sources. In normal cases, the agreement is that you can take the technology from Westinghouse, increase the capacity, and continue to use it. Westinghouse insisted that it could only be used within South Korea, but that approval would have to be sought abroad. And now it turns out that there are 2 groups of vendor companies.
Получилось так, что вот есть 2 группы компаний-вендоров. Одни вот вокруг
Some around that group of comrades who gathered in Brussels.
собирались в Брюсселе, у них действительно хорошие данные.
They have really good data, active participation of the World Nuclear Association. Everything seems to be fine. And it seems that the issue of financing should be resolved now. But it is not very clear what exactly they are going to finance. I think I have listed all the available
То есть
options.
фактически
That is, it
получается,
turns out that if
что,
Rosatom
если
decides to
Rosatom
take part in all
решается
kinds of
участвовать
tenders,
во всевозможных
there will be a
конкурсах,
shortage of builders in this
на этом рынке
market.
образуется
They are
дефицит.
experiencing a construction deficit.
Инвестиции,
There are 2 groups. Some people seem to see a source of funding, but do not understand what it costs. But they are ready to talk about managing the capacity of nuclear generation by 2050, about quadrupling it by 2060, about operating by 2070, and about the BRICS platform, where they simply build. There they talk about what needs to be built, but here they just build. But at the same time, of course, they are resolving the issue of financing. It is difficult to say how this will be resolved. It is also obvious that Rosatom sees new orders. After the first real project of a small nuclear power plant was brought to the market, the negotiation process went
Вот об
faster.
этом хотелось бы как раз
This is
сказать,
exactly what I would like to talk
одним
about.
из последних
One of the
проектов
latest
Росатома
projects of
является
Rosatom, as you know,
проект
is the project of a
реактора
low-power
мощности в
reactor in Uzbekistan,
который,
which was,
как бы,
I would say, 6 reactors. 6 reactors, yes, 6 nuclear power units at a level of 330 in
энергоблоков
total.
на уровень 330, как бы суммарно. Вот если
If we
говорить
talk about the market of small
вообще вот
nuclear
рынке
reactors,
малых
what is the general
атомных
combination of
реакторов,
players here?
вот здесь вообще какое сочетание игроков?
The market is beautiful and vast. The completed project, only one, only ours. Yes, it is 100%, a lot of projects. In total, government regulators in different countries around the world are considering more than 50 projects. They are considering it, but so far no approvals have been received from government regulators. But that's okay, the process is ongoing. Wonderful projects. I saw them in 3D format. And it seems that one of the English companies is even going to make a hologram to make it look nice.
Известно, что Казахстан
Boris Leonidovich, it is known that Kazakhstan made a decision in a referendum to develop nuclear energy. to build the first nuclear power plant, and after that made a statement about the creation of a so-called international consortium, about the creation of the first nuclear power plant. Is this scheme even viable without identifying some kind of main participant, a contractor? The question is who will be responsible for security if all four companies that made it to the final of the tender participate. The four companies, I remind you, EDF, it is enough if you make a decision in their favor. Then in the next 20 years, Kazakhstan may not have to worry about nuclear safety, because there will be no station. That's understandable. Second option, the company is the same, South Korean KEPCO. If the choice is made in her favor, it is not my business in any way to advise Kazakhstani experts, the Kazakhstani Ministry of Energy, on how to make the choice. I would just like to remind you that South Korea does not have its own technology for producing nuclear fuel. South Korea does not have decommissioning technology, and South Korea does not have technology for reprocessing used nuclear fuel. But a choice can be made. Why not, if a decision is made? The other two participants are Rosatom and one of China's three nuclear corporations. China is big, there are three corporations there. In this case, we are talking about the three national nuclear power. Rosatom has been working with this company since 1999. So if we call it a consortium, then I think that these two can produce an excellent result. Boris Leonidovich, as you know, in Germany, contrary to the global trend, made the decision to close all nuclear power units. The focus is on renewable energy, on the creation of gas thermal power plants as balancing generation. So, can we say that?
Вот можно ли сказать, что через год после того, как
a year after this decision was put into effect, that this decision by Germany had some basis, has some validity, or is the result of this rejection of nuclear energy rather negative?
результат вот этого
Your opinion.
атомной энергетики скорее отрицательный? Ваше мнение?
Well, if my estimated opinion, it's a great decision. We are seeing a recession. I hope that it will turn into a depression into a recession. Unemployment will grow. Industry will close. I believe that the Scholz government, I am, of course, very much insist that the voters' votes be given to this brilliant party so that he wins again, so that he leads again. My grandfather left a lot unfinished business in Berlin. That is, people, they finish everything they can. It is already known. If we speak seriously about how Habeck pushed through the decision to close the nuclear power units, forged documents, all this has been won. But to play back, yes, there are already estimates that rather than dismantling, returning to operation will be a little faster and more secure, but cheaper, especially since there are nuclear fuel, production plants on German territory. That is, the complex has not completely fallen apart. Well, whatever decision was made, that's what was made. In order to be able to truly compensate or balance this climate-dependent generation by gas power plants, it is also necessary to implement some specific policy in the gas market. We don't see it, to be completely honest. And we don't see any desire to build this gas policy. Of course, given the high prices at TTF Hub, no energy company will likely invest. Moreover, the Green Deal has not been cancelled. And let me remind you that one of the goals of this Green Deal is to completely abandon fossil fuels by 2050. Well, where do you want to find an investor who in 2025 will invest in something that still needs to be built? To come up with a system for outputting power that will close in 20 years. We allocate 5 years for construction, 20 years will either pay off or not. Accordingly, we see how it ended. Electricity is being purchased from France. 72% of generation at nuclear power units. Everything is fine. Electricity is being purchased from Sweden, bound by contracts. Moreover, in Sweden, part of the power plant belongs to the Juniper company, which has now become state-owned. Nationalization in 2022 will make all the neighbors groan a little, because the absence of EWT in Germany guarantees an instant increase in electricity tariffs for everyone around it. I would like to touch on another aspect of the topic.
последнее время атомная энергетика
Recently, nuclear energy has gradually begun to be drawn into sanctions, which seemed completely impossible just a year ago. This is beginning to manifest itself primarily in the area of nuclear fuel. The United States, as is known, has decided to ban the import of Russian uranium. The Russian Federation responded in kind to the introduction of restrictions. Boris Leonidovich, in general, what short, medium, and mid-range consequences can such decisions have? Let's first sort out the terminology. There is no uranium in the decision of the US Department of Energy or in the decision of the government of the Russian Federation. There is an enriched uranium product. Yes, enriched uranium product, I agree. These are not just different words. If we take the cost of uranium ore per unit, then the cost of the enriched uranium product has a coefficient of 12. These are fundamentally different things, you must agree. Indeed, deliveries were made in 2013. Agreement expired, also known as HEU-LEU, high enriched uranium, low enriched uranium, also known as megatons to megawatts. Batio. The period of signing normal commercial agreements with American companies has begun. Nuclear energy in the USA is not state-owned. Each nuclear power plant is privately owned. Here they signed contracts with our text export on the international market, Marker 12. TEK-TOK, I'm sorry. The contracts are 10-year contracts. In 2024, they basically all ended, and in fact, this is where Biden's minister did what he did. Of course, this is a free market, especially the United States, but it is a doubly free market, so the quota for the export of an enriched equal product from Russia was determined by law at 20%. Well, because it's a free market, free competition, these 20% will be gone. It would seem so, but the law that was passed and signed by Biden in July of this year has some caveats. The Department of Energy may grant an exception to this embargo if there is no comparable product on the market, or if the lack of such a product would threaten U.S. national security. American companies understand perfectly well that in general there is nowhere to go in this market, because if we take the enrichment capacity of the planet as 100%, Rosatom is 46%. If you look a little more closely at the remaining 54%, you will find China with a 16% share of the world market, which has never sold anything anywhere. Since the law went into effect, 2 companies in the United States have already received 2 exemptions. Now you will also need to obtain permission in Russia. Suddenly, a Chinese enriched uranium product appeared on the American market, and we discovered with some surprise that Chinese corporations have significantly increased their orders for enriched uranium products from Rosatom. The United States simply does not have its own technology for enriching uranium in the isotope 235. Didn't appear. They couldn't. The plant, which operates in the United States, is the technology of the European company Urenco, in general, European, for the reason that the main capital is strictly proportionally divided between the governments of England, Holland, and Germany. According to the head of the IAEA, in order to overcome such dependence on Rosatom, it will take 7 to 8 years, and the efforts of all those interested in this. This is quite a significant amount. When we are told that Congress has allocated $1 billion, it simply means nothing. Is the uranium product of the Russian Federation difficult to replace in the short term or not replaceable at all? 10 years, I would still say, is a medium-term perspective. And the Director General of the IAEA says the same thing, that it will take about 10 years to compensate for the departure from Russian technologies. Boris Leonidovich, I would also like to look at the situation in the Russian Federation. As is known, the development until 2050 strategy is currently being discussed. Energy development strategy until 2050. And what role does this document generally assign in the nuclear industry? And what are its tasks in the internal circuit, at least to outline them? Well, I am neither the head of a federal
руководителем
subject nor the head of a large energy company. That's where the discussion takes place. The Department of Energy believes that this is sufficient to meet the energy stage by 2050. And, as we know, all previous energy strategies, developed behind the scenes and internally, produced brilliant results. There is a discussion at international forums where representatives of the Ministry of Energy are discussing some parts, but not in African sources. At the same time, the Ministry of Energy believes that it is discussing this with experts. I don't know the experts exactly, but I know. We know who our governor is. But it never occurred to me to call them and ask them to send me a copy. What will be in that strategy?
В неких таких вот в официальных оценках, допустим, и вот...
In some of these official assessments, for example, we recently had a meeting in our studio with a representative of the State Duma Standing Committee on the Fuel and Energy
Дума по
Complex.
топливно-энергетическому комплексу. Вот они говорят о возможном увеличении...
About the possible increase in the share of nuclear energy in the energy balance, approximately 23-25 up to a certain period of time. Well, if we say it off the top of our heads, this is a real prospect.
Вообще реальная перспектива.
This is real. This is very tough, of course. But this is the president's task to increase the share of nuclear generation in the balance to 25% now in terms of installed capacity. Now at level 20, just 20 without anything. According to Rosatom's own estimates, this is the construction of 37 new large nuclear power units. This is tough, but this is also our replacement station. The BMK reactor needs to be completely decommissioned. And what we saw in the complex, general plan for the placement of generation facilities for the period up to 2042, sites have been identified. This includes the Far East, of course. Something needs to be done there. We need to build, the energy color is growing there, and China sees this. Something needs to be done. In our south, thank God, next summer the company Interravel agreed that capacity would be reserved in Georgia and Azerbaijan. When we start having rolling blackouts again, someone has to come to the rescue. We went to meet them halfway because we had been helping them out for the past few decades. But now the situation has changed. It turns out that we can't cope with our own electric power industry. Gazurov's plan has already ended for us. Thank God, it is more than 100 years old. We need to develop a new one. But for now we are developing an energy strategy for the period up to 2050. And I think it will be absolutely successful, just like all previous energy strategies. Yes, of course, you are not too optimistic. Rate this document. But nevertheless, it seems to me that if perhaps we try to summarize the results of our meeting, the results of our conversation, that it is still possible, of course, to talk about a renaissance of nuclear energy in the West, but without the participation of the Russian Federation in all stages, all segments of the nuclear industry, it is probably impossible to talk about any renaissance. It is possible to speak. We are in a democratic country. How can we forbid people to speak? Seriously speaking, at least a big three is gradually emerging. There was such a big atomic trio during the times of historical materialism, the USSR, France, and the United States. In France, the United States left. They had some other decisions. There were no intrigues, no slanderous letters, no black pistols from Rosatom here. In reality, 3 Chinese corporations are building it now. And that same South Korean corporation is showing quite good results. But their previous president also believed that nuclear energy was a dead end and demanded that it be closed. Yes, and this president has already been impeached. He confirmed it, but went somewhere into impeachment because there were some difficulties there. The IRA began building nuclear power units for the first time using its own technologies. It would be good if it works out, because the more variety there is, their base capacity is about 750 megawatts. That is, they will hit the middle. After many years, we managed to find funding and solve technical problems in India, where there are 500 megawatts. That is, such a policy is being adopted. All of this, what I listed, is BRICS Plus. In fact, it is not a solution, but a proposal from Rosatom that was grouped so that an exchange of experience, an exchange of technologies and specialists could take place. This is the most important thing, in fact, in any high-tech industry. The most important part is people. This year, Rosatom reported that in its nuclear universities and its technical academy, it was able to train 1,200 foreign specialists in 1 year. This is good because these are the people who live in our engineering school, in our scientific school. This is not MGMO. Our ambassadors travel in large numbers to all countries. 600 Turkish specialists will be trained for our nuclear power plant in Turkey. These are our ambassadors. Thank you very much for the conversation, Boris Leonidovich.